And later on in life, I realized that my mom has also been able to perceive spirit ever since she was a child. She has this really lovely story about when she was a little girl. She was sitting with her grandmother, who was in bed, getting close to end of life. And she watched my grandmother get up out of her body in spirit form, walk around the bed, and get back into her body. So when she was telling me that story later on in life, I asked her, did that scare you at all? And she said, no, I don't know why it didn't scare me, but it didn't. So, kind of fast forward many years, and her father, my grandpa, died when she was young, probably only in her 30s. And she said that he has come to her many times to visit her. And so what's beautiful about that is that I recognize that although I believe that we all have the ability to tap into spirit, we all have the ability to do what I do, not everyone is interested in developing that. Not everyone is open to developing that. But because of my mom's history, when she learned that I was able to tap into spirit, that wasn't anything that was ever, like, oh, we don't talk about that, or oh, keep that quiet kind of a thing. So I never felt like I had to hide any part of myself.
Welcome in. I'm so excited for this interview today. You guys are going to be absolutely fascinated. If you're enjoying this content, go ahead and click that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And if you would rather listen than watch, you can find us now on Spotify, Apple iTunes, all podcast platforms. Just go to your favorite platform, type in Journey to the New Earth, and you'll find us there. And last thing, if you'd like to keep track of what's going on around the planet, but it seems a little overwhelming, and I don't blame you, you might want to sign up for our Friday morning email newsletter. The link is in the description box down below. Every Friday morning, we send out a very short, very sweet, but informative newsletter containing pertinent information we think we'd want to share. It's super easy to sign up, super free. Link is in the description box down below. I think you're going to love it. In today's toxic world, taking care of our health is more important than ever. One of the natural solutions I've integrated into my routine is the benefit of mushrooms. And the go-to place for me is Birch Boys. They are without a doubt one of the greatest resources for mushroom products on the planet. Made in the USA, sustainably sourced, and run by an absolute wonderful entrepreneur, Birch Boys has become my go-to for natural health solutions. While they have a wide variety of mushroom products, the two that I use every day are right here. First, I use the ChagaNOW, which is a wonderful mixture that I put a tiny little scoop in my morning coffee to support my immune system. Chaga is one of the most effective immune support compounds on the planet, and this is a super way to get it into your daily diet in an easy to use formula and very, very effective for immune system support. And if you're looking for clear thinking, I can tell you, you'll be surprised at the effects of Lions Mane. I use this Lions Mane Tincture, 1 teaspoon every single morning, and the difference in the clarity of my thinking is extraordinary. I was actually really, really surprised. Birch Boys has a whole lineup of mushroom tinctures. Make sure you check them out when you're on the website, but I'll tell you what, these are my two favorite, and I use them every single day. They are absolutely a quality company built on integrity. Go to birchboys.com and use the code NEWEARTH for 20% off your entire order. Birch Boys mushroom products, I think you're going to love it. And with that, I'd like to welcome in medium and energy intuitive Chenée Fournier. How are you, Chenée?
I am well, thank you. How are you, Kimberly?
I'm good. I'm so excited for this conversation. I have watched your YouTube channel. We'll have her YouTube channel listed in the description box down below. And it gave me just a little bit of a taste of what you do and what your skills are. Can you bring us back to the very beginning of how this all started for you?
Well, ever since I was a child, I've been able to perceive spirit. And later on in life, I realized that my mom has also been able to perceive spirit ever since she was a child. She has this really lovely story about when she was a little girl. She was sitting with her grandmother, who was in bed, getting close to end of life. And she watched my grandmother get up out of her body in spirit form, walk around the bed, and get back into her body. So when she was telling me that story later on in life, I asked her, did that scare you at all? And she said, no, I don't know why it didn't scare me, but it didn't. So, kind of fast forward many years, and her father, my grandpa, died when she was young, probably only in her 30s. And she said that he has come to her many times to visit her. And so what's beautiful about that is that I recognize that although I believe that we all have the ability to tap into spirit, we all have the ability to do what I do, not everyone is interested in developing that. Not everyone is open to developing that. But because of my mom's history, when she learned that I was able to tap into spirit, that wasn't anything that was ever, like, oh, we don't talk about that, or oh, keep that quiet kind of a thing. So I never felt like I had to hide any part of myself. It wasn't something that while I was growing up that I necessarily even knew that it was spirit that I was seeing. I have one particular instance where I opened my eyes. I was laying in bed. I was probably in elementary school, and I opened my eyes and I looked out into the hallway because my bedroom door was open, and directly across the hallway from me was a closet door. And I just remember blinking my eyes a number of times and wondering, who's that standing in the hallway and why can I see through him? And the interesting thing is he was wearing a zoot suit. So, something from the 1940s. So very historic, compared to my time frame. And it is interesting because it did not scare me. I didn't even wonder why the person was standing there. So it's sort of like when you grow up with these sort of abilities, you don't even wonder where they're coming from or what they mean, because you just think this is normal. Like, I just thought this was normal for people to be able to see beings that you could see through. So over the course of my life, at a certain point in my life, I developed a fear of death. And I was still a little kid. I was probably elementary school. And I thought I was going to die and go to hell. And so that, of course, led to quite a bit of existential angst. As a little kid, you don't know what that's called. You just know that you're very fearful about something. And so then I turned my back on basically a belief in anything, because I figured, well, if I don't believe in anything, well, then there'll be nothing to be afraid of. And over the course of time, I grew out of my fear of death. And one big thing for me that happened was, I think it was my late teen years, I can't remember when it was, I started learning about lots of different spiritual practices and lots of different spiritualities and different paths. And I learned from Tibetan Buddhism the practice called loving kindness meditation. And so every now and then, off and on over the years, I would still have this fear come up of death, but not as strong as it was when I was a kid. And so when I learned about loving kindness meditation, I thought, okay, well, I don't believe in evil and I don't believe in the devil, but if there is an entity called the devil, that being has probably racked up lifetimes of negative karma. So how about if I sit in meditation, invite the devil to sit in meditation with me, and flow loving kindness towards this entity, towards this so-called being? And because surely once they feel what it feels like to have loving kindness flowing towards them, and they recognize the negative karma that they're racking up being the way that they are, then surely they will have an awakening and they will no longer cause problems in the world. And this is going on in my mind while I'm doing the meditation, even though I don't believe in the devil, I don't believe in evil, but I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and do this anyway. And then shortly after that occurrence, I had this really powerful dream where I was coming up a set of stairs with a really beautiful red wall beside me, and coming up these stairs. And it felt like I was having this elevation in consciousness take place. And then from that moment on, I knew, oh, okay, there will never be those times again where I just wake up and think, oh my gosh, I was asleep. I've lost control of my mind. I've, sworn my soul away to something and I'm going to die and go to hell. Just really, really illogical things can, bring fear into your reality when you're a child. But so after that occurrence happened, I realized, oh, I've turned past a point now. I'm no longer ever going to fear that. And as I do this mediumship work, what I believe really just keeps getting reinforced, which is there is no evil. There is nothing to fear. There is nothing I have to protect myself against, because once I am no longer in physical form, just like any being, once each being, whether they're human or non-human, once they're no longer in a physical form, they are once again pure spirit. They are once again pure source and pure divinity. So no, I don't believe that there are any beings in the spirit realm that are running around trying to cause problems. So therefore, I don't believe that there's anything that I need to protect myself from. And one of the things that's really powerful for people when I do, whether it's energy healings with them, mediumship readings with them, angel spirit guides readings with them, is that I can really assure them there is nothing to fear. You are whole and holy and sacred just as you are. You will see your loved ones again. And in fact, they are going to continue to have a relationship with you, even from their new frequency of being just spirit and no longer in physical. So I always really assure my clients and anyone I interact with, there is no death. So I'm not communicating with your dead loved ones or your departed loved ones. Departed is a little bit more of an accurate word than death, than dead. But the fact of the matter is, our beings, our loved ones in spirit are with us always, just waiting to have a relationship with us. And if we open up to that, we can have the most beautiful relationship, even more beautiful than when they were here in the physical form sometimes.
Yeah. All right.
So,
I want to stop here and go back a little bit because I have some
okay.
questions about when you were younger. It's just so fascinating to me. First of all, I always wonder, why does this person perceive spirit? Why, and this person doesn't? I always wonder, what's the choosing? And do we choose that before we incarnate? And then the second question I have is, apparently you were not able to, not only able to sense spirit, but you saw them. I mean, and that's not common. That's a unique skill. So take us back there and and let me know how you perceived spirit. And was it a continual thing, or was it just from time to time, or how did that work for you?
For me, it was a continual thing all the way back to even when I was a child. I would oftentimes talk in my sleep. And sometimes I would be like, my mom would peek in the room just to find out, well, who am I talking to? Like, why am I, jabbering on so much in my sleep or what have you? And so I actually believe that during those times, I wasn't talking in sleep. I was having lucid interactions with beings in spirit. So back to your question of, do we choose this before we incarnate? I don't know if we choose this before we incarnate, because I believe that each one of us comes in as these babies, these newborn babies with lots of memories, lots of the abilities to interact with and realize our interconnectedness with spirit. But if you grow up in a family that shushes that, or makes you feel ashamed of that, or makes you feel scared of that, or calls that your imaginary friend, or tells you, oh no, we don't talk about that kind of stuff, then that gets quieted down really quickly. So I believe that probably nearly everyone comes into this world with the ability to see and interact with spirit. But if you don't, if you're not allowed for that to be cultivated, if you're not just kind of even just left alone to let that happen, or for having a parent who can actually shape that for you, that's beautiful as well. So I don't believe that I'm necessarily any different than other people, but who knows? Maybe I am, because I know that this is something that comes down through the maternal lineage. My dad is incredibly intuitive. He would probably call it more like using common sense, more like street smarts, but he's very intuitive. So I
Yeah.
believe that it is our birthright to be able to see spirit and to be able to interact with spirit. But if it's something that is, shushed in us awfully young for some weird reason, and for some weird reason that the word shush keeps coming through, and that's not really a word that I use often. So I'm channeling somebody right now. But the fact of the matter is, if you're just allowed that expression and no one makes you feel fearful or shameful because of it, or shamed because of it, then I think that more of us would have this ability and be aware of it. For some people, it's just simply their intuition. Their intuition is the guidance of spirit coming through them. And so for me, whether it kind of came or went, it is something that's just been with me consistently. But during that time period where I just sort of turned my back on anything, it wasn't as apparent and tangible during that time. And then when I got into the 18, 19, kind of 20-year age range, and then started doing a lot of spiritual retreats and learning about a lot of different spiritual teachings and reading philosophers, and then getting into quantum physics and learning about neurology and just learning about human behavior, just all these beautiful things just started snowballing and just creating this gorgeous, like the word that's coming to mind is like a sacred geometric symbol. It just formed this sacred geometric symbol around me that then brings information into me as needed and helps express and expel anything that isn't needed, anything that might get in my way. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's the answer
Yeah,
that
that
flowed
was
through.
beautiful. You know what came to mind for me when you were describing that and going to the different retreats is how you must filter information, because I don't see spirit like you do. I don't sense spirit like you do. Most of us don't, because of the Western culture that we live in. I think more
Right,
indigenous populations are more supportive of it, but for some reason we've got off on this track where, we're going to tell kids they're making it up. So that's where we are.
right.
So you're not only dealing with what I perceive to be like a very loud, noisy world that we live in
Mhm.
human form, but you also have another layer of spiritual beings that you're seeing that are no longer in physical. So
Right.
how did you learn to filter what you are perceiving and working with? For instance, if you're talking to a girlfriend, you're out to lunch, you're talking to a girlfriend, and you look up and her grandfather's standing behind
Right.
her who passed away 20 years ago. How did you learn to focus on her and not say, oh, by the way, grandpa's right there?
I think that because this is something that's been with me since childhood, I never really had to learn how to filter stuff. The biggest time when filtering needs to happen might be when I'm sleeping or starting to go to sleep. That's when I had to learn to say, I'm off the clock now. I'm not open for business. I'm not open for messages to come through. Messages from my higher self, yes, definitely. Less messages from my loved ones, definitely. But if I have a mediumship reading the next day, all of a sudden, like certain messages will start flowing through and beings will start showing up. And I'll have to say, okay, okay, wait a minute. No, no, no. The closed sign is up. So I think probably what it is that maybe since I was able to do this since childhood on forward, I don't know, maybe just self-preservation at some point kind of kicked in and just like my spirit body learned to filter it for me. And if I am talking to someone who I know would not be open to messages coming through, then while I'm speaking with them, I'm simultaneously telepathically communicating with the being in spirit to just say, I'm sorry, but your loved one isn't going to be open to a message coming through medium. So,
Yeah.
but what can happen is that later on in the conversation, I might have an opportunity to bring up whatever lesson it is or whatever message it is that wants to come through, but just not
Oh,
use the words, this is from your grandparent or this is from your
yeah.
aunt or what have you.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I do have, when you used the word Native American earlier, I do have a beautiful story that when I was on retreat, I was on a 10-day silent Zen retreat. Gosh, this was probably back in the early 2000s. And I was sleeping by myself in this rammed earth little hut that was a little bit further away from the main retreat center. And it was the first or second night that I was there. And I was awoken to a really beautiful light in the room. And now, this particular little rammed earth hut was only illuminated by one solar light that lost energy quickly and did not illuminate very brightly. So I knew that this was a being in spirit that was there. And it was really beautiful because it was a Native American man on horseback, bareback, with that beautiful breastplate that they wear and the feather headdress that they wear, just gorgeous. And telepathically, he was asking me, what are you doing here? And so telepathically, I conveyed to him, I'm here seeking enlightenment. I'm here trying to better myself, but not just for myself, but to try to then turn around and be a bright light in this world and help others as well. So I'm not just seeking enlightenment just for my own self, but for all of the world, not just humanity, but the whole world. And it was really beautiful because there was just this sense of, okay, then you're welcome. And then he rode off on the horse, and there were probably about 4 or 5 other Native American men on horseback that rode off with him. And then I, went back to sleep. And the next day, I didn't necessarily tell anyone at the retreat about it, but that next day is when I found out the retreat land is actually on property that used to be a part of Native American lands that was taken from the Native Americans. And there are still Native Americans who live nearby, and the land butts up to the property. And so the people who run the retreat center have made it be known to all of the Native Americans, you are always welcome on this land. You never have to ask permission. You're welcome to come sit in meditation. You're welcome to take retreats here. And so I just thought that was really beautiful. And I didn't even know ahead of time that this was Native American land. So it made perfect sense then why the Native American man showed up.
It's a beautiful story.
Yeah,
Beautiful
yeah,
story. I imagine that's just a wonderful memory for you
it
to be able to
is.
look
Yeah,
back now.
yeah.
So just before we continue, I just want to say, if you see anybody back here, I'm open. You can tell
Okay,
me.
okay.
I always wonder when I'm talking to a medium, it's like, Dad, are you? It's like, who's here? Who's here? So it sounds like you had a more unique journey than some mediums I've talked to, where they sort of go dark
Mm,
for a period. After the early years, they kind of go dark and then they maybe reconnect again after an experience or some kind of issue that leads them to connect to a more spiritual life.
mm.
You you sound like you just went right through. Is there a part of you that feels like this skill that you have is almost universal, or you've always had it? In other words, does it feel like I've always done this, I will always do this, it's just a part of me? Or were you aware that it was unique and you were building it?
I think kind of a combination of both, because my spiritual landscape has become one where I want my everyday life to be my spiritual practice. And I'm sure you've heard that saying, you take the meditation off of the cushion, you take the prayer out of the pews, right? Like you live your path. And so for me, this path, I'm not driven to be a medium, I'm called to be a medium. I'm not driven to live my spiritual essence. I'm called to live my spiritual essence. And I believe that we all are. And that's going to come through for each person individually. So for me, I do believe that we are all expressions of source. We are all expressions of that one same beautiful, creative, sacred life force energy. And we are here, each one of us, with a purpose. For me, I can kind of distill it down to joy, I think, is everyone's birthright. Joy is everyone's purpose. Living a light filled life is also everyone's purpose. For me, what I've been able to see really recently, what I've started really being able to see is that each person is a point of light. So I'm sure you're probably familiar with that style of painting called pointillism. So when you're up close, you see all these little tiny dots. And when you stand back, it forms one unified image, this piece of art. So what I've begun to see is that the whole world is like a canvas for source, a canvas for creative energy. And each being, whether they are human or non-human, whether they are physical or non-physical, we are all points of light. We are all beings of light. And so we form together to make this beautiful pointillism sort of painting, or a tapestry, if you will, just this beautiful work of art. And so I learned a number of years ago that I believe it's our mitochondria. Our bodies actually emit light that scientific instruments can pick up on. And I'm not just talking about a heat signature that picks up through infrared instruments, but light. So we are beings of light. So I believe that one of my belief systems is every single one of us is a being of light. And if we
Yeah.
can truly get back to that essence, there is no original sin, there is no negative karma, there's no heaviness that we need to shed or pay for or pay off. There's nothing terrible about us. At the essence of it all, we are beings of light. So if we
Yeah.
can move through our life knowing this, then oh my goodness, we can be so much happier, we can be so much more fulfilled. So for me, coming back to recognize that I'm a being of light means also that since we're all beings of light, we are all, the phrase that I love using, which is distinct but not different. We're distinct, we're unique, but we're not different at the highest echelon of the highest frequency. So
Yeah.
basically, if I can remember that and I can shine brightly, then others can remember it. They can shine brightly. And people who are further along the spiritual path than I am, and that I'm in the same resonance with, they can pull me along with their light, and then so on and so forth. So for me, it's just this beautiful upliftment of all of life. And that includes every molecule of water, every particle of light. Everything in this world is ascending. And at the same time, I think each one of us that's here in physical form, we have the opportunities to embody more fully our spiritual essence, our lightness of being, our joy, our source energy ness. And so I just think that that really takes a whole lot of pressure off of people when they can realize you are whole and holy and perfect, and you don't have to earn the love that is just waiting to be felt by all of us and shared by all of us. And I know when you, I'm sure that you're probably the same way that I am, when you get around people that are just emitting their light and emitting their love, I don't know, it's kind of intoxicating. It's just really beautiful to get to be around that. And you're just like, oh, I just feel happier and brighter just because I got to interact with that person.
Yeah, and
And I
I can
love that.
I can I can feel people's energy. That's one thing I can do. I have a girlfriend, Chenée, that has been working on her consciousness for several decades now, and she has a photo of herself, and there's other people in the photo, and everyone else shows up in the photo, and where she's standing, it's just light.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's beautiful. I love
Yes.
that.
So it's just so validating that way. You say we're light and we're if the entire planet knew how divine we were,
Hmm. I know.
things would be so simple.
They would be. I know they would. And I use that word with no dogma to it, right? That's what I love about
Mhm.
certain words is that you can just cut down to like the essence of it and strip away any of the conditioning that comes with it and just say, you're divine, you're sacred, you're holy, you know, and when you say that to people, you can just see them stand up a little taller, just kind of shine a bit brighter. And then, of course, the monkey mind can start chattering away. And then people can find themselves thinking, but is that really true? It's like, yes, it's really true. It really is
Mhm.
that simple. It really is that true. Life may not be easy, but it can be simple. And so
Yeah.
sometimes I think the spiritual path is made out to be this long, arduous thing. And oh my goodness, so many ups and downs are going to happen. They might. But also, sometimes if you can just accept that, okay, well, also beauty is going to transpire and roadblocks can fall away and it can be simple. And so I think that that's what helps me do this work and be so joyful about it is that it's simple, it's joyful, and it comes with ease for me. And even if I won the lotto tomorrow and never had to earn another dollar in my life, I would still keep doing the work that I'm doing because I
Yeah.
love doing it. I just love, love, love being in each other, in another person's energy field the way that I get to be. And I do what I call family reunions. You know, it's like I'm bringing people together in spirit and in physical, and it's gorgeous. And I love getting to be a part of that.
Let's move into now. So we left off when you were in your early 20s and you went to the retreat and you started really doing a lot of research into different spiritual practices. How did the mediumship come up for you? Where did you decide, I think I can be a medium. I think I can do this, which I want to be a medium when I grow up. That's my dream career. So how did that work out for you that you decided, well, I think that this is something that I would love to do?
You know, that started for me back in, I think, 2010 when I started doing energy healing work. And I would recognize that while I was doing the work, all sorts of beings would show up. You know, spirit animal guides would show up, people's loved ones in spirit would show up, just beings of light that I didn't even recognize would show up. And so I just had to discern, okay, well, what do I speak forth? How do I speak it forth? So I'm not one of those silent energy healers. That's why I've dubbed what I do spoken word energy healing, because I speak as I'm doing these sessions. Even if I'm doing sessions with clients and I'm connecting with them just telepathically and not through technology, not through the internet, I'm still speaking it out loud because my belief is that when I speak, my voice creates sound waves, and those sound waves can be imbued with healing frequencies. And no matter where somebody is, they're going to feel those sound waves. Plus, those sound waves stay in motion all around the planet, helping to bring just soothing, calming energy all around the planet. So, after a certain point, I recognized I don't want to do silent healing. I don't want to not be able to speak these words out loud. I want to be able to tell people what I'm seeing. So, of course, I always ask their permission first. I always ask them, is it okay for me to read your energy field? Is it okay if a loved one comes through for me to bring through the messages from them? Now, if somebody has found me and they just simply only want energy work and they're really not open to mediumship, well, that's okay. I can turn that site off because for some people, that scares them. It scares them to realize that beings in spirit are around them. So, what I see a part of my task is as a medium is to assure people there's nothing to be afraid of. Death is not something to be afraid of because we don't actually die, just our physical form does. And we, as an essence, as a spirit body, as a spirit person, will continue on. And I believe that one of the biggest wounds to the human psyche is the existential angst, the fear of death. What comes next? What are we here for? But when I can show people your loved ones are still right there with you, they know what you're doing, they know what you're going through, they know what you're grappling with, and they can offer you advice and guidance. And they can even tell you what happened 2 days ago, even though they made their transition to the spirit realm 2 years ago. So that's letting you know they are still right there with you. So for me, there's just this beautiful, that for me sort of is the ultimate energy healing. There's this beautiful energy that transpires in a mediumship reading that is just as healing as an energy healing session. So over the course of time, I just kept going deeper and deeper into the mediumship. And then in 2020, I actually took 2 courses, one with Annie G, and she is a student of Mavis Patilla. And Mavis Patilla is a British medium who she's now gone on to spirit as well. And then Suzanne Giesman, she's also a really fantastic medium. So I got the really super sort of spiritualism side of mediumship from Mavis Patilla's way of mediumship. And then I got the evidential mediumship through Suzanne Giesman. So for me, it's really important to bring through evidence that I am truly connecting with somebody's loved one. And that will come through personality. It'll come through with details about how this person made their passing. Mediumship reading that I just recently did, the person asked me if her mom was with her uncle in heaven. And I said, well, she's definitely there with her sister. And the name came through. And I said, let me check in on the uncle. And I said, okay, yes, she's definitely there with your uncle. And I said, my attention is being brought to my right ring finger. And I held up my hand and I put my hand over the finger, and because I was really getting a strong sensation right at the knuckle of the ring finger. And she held her hand up to the camera and got tears in her eyes. And she said, this is my mom's ring and this is my uncle's ring. And so the rings being right on top of each other and touching each other, I said, okay, well, that's evidence. I had no idea that you're wearing rings, and I had no idea, like, why would it be this particular finger? But that's the finger that she was wearing the rings on. So, oh my goodness. I mean, I have story upon story upon story of just this evidence that comes through.
Spirit is so creative.
And they are immediate. They're just like, boom, here's your evidence.
And immediate. That's the really fun thing. So you decide I'm going to be a medium, and it came as a result of the energy work. And I can't tell you how many girlfriends I've had over the years that were massage therapists that get so many experiences just from hands-on and getting so involved in someone's energy field.
Right.
So I can really see that, particularly as open as you were, how that you just started down that path and boom.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is your perception? Let's say that you're just in a room and you're talking to someone, and someone in spirit comes up to you that's connected to that person. How do they know that you can see them? Like, if they came up to me, it's going to be a blank slate. How do they know that you're a conduit?
I believe, and this is just kind of coming through as you asked me this question, I believe that those of us who can see spirit, we emit a different frequency of light than other beings who can't, sort of the thing. It's kind of like when you go into a certain country, like when I did spend time in France, a lot of the French people just immediately wanted to speak French with me because they thought I was French. And having spent 3 months in France, I do look French. And so I think it's the same thing. Like when you get into an environment where you're going to speak the language of the locals, so to say, then they're just going to come up to you and start talking. So the beings in spirit just know, they know when they're around people who can perceive them. So for me, I do have clairaudience, claircognizance, clairsentience, clairvoyance, and clairalliance. So I have all those clairs. So I don't love going to big gatherings. I don't love being in big groups of people. And that's not because I can't turn it off, because I can. If I want to not be picking up and perceiving on energies, I can do that. I can turn that off. However, that takes energy. It does take energy to turn it off. So I prefer being in nature. I prefer being in smaller kind of intimate gatherings. I can go to the big gatherings, it's just not my preference. But yeah, I really do believe that beings in spirit they know who's going to pick up on them. And they'll know if you have clairvoyance, they'll know if you have clairaudience, because it does take them energy. So they have to exert some energy to slow their frequency down. And my frequency raises. And then in that medium place right there, that's where we can both perceive each other. I can perceive them. They can always perceive me. But that's when I can perceive them with visuals, with clairvoyance. Now, if they know that I'm not going to be able to perceive them clairvoyantly, they're not going to waste their energy coming through in form, in an expression of form. But instead, they might drop information into me claircognizantly, where I just know something. Or if they can't, well, they'll know I won't perceive it that way, then they'll bring it through clairaudiently. So I don't know which one of those takes them the most energy, but I know for me, it kind of happens as a tapestry, sort of all at once. The one thing I have made clear, though, because I don't do this work alone, my true self, my higher self, that part of me, that larger part of me that has never left spirit, that is there right now and informing me, it is sending information, it's bringing information to me, because I believe, and I've heard other energy workers say this, I believe that my physical body exists within this energy field of my soul, of my spirit, and it is constantly flowing into me and out of me in a torus field. So it's bringing energy out that I don't need, it's bringing energy in that I do need. It's this constant flux, this constant movement of energy. Simultaneously, there's a stream of energy that connects me always to the spirit realm. And the spirit realm, I believe, is as close to me as my breath. And in fact, it's in every one of my cells. It's in every one of your cells. We can't not be a part of the spirit realm. So, and in fact, one of the things that I have come to determine that this work that any of us do that is trying to help brighten the world and make it lovelier and kinder is that we're trying to make Earth more heavenly. I don't believe that it has to be so dichotomous to the spirit world.
Yeah.
And I've lost your question.
You know, I want to move, I want to ask you this because I'm really curious about this. The vibration on Earth is raising right now.
Mhm.
So we're kind of ascending to a higher vibrational state. Do you notice a difference in your skills
I
as a
do.
result of that?
I do. I do. And right now my head is just totally tingling. And that's always, that's like the spirit, like tapping me like, hey, pay attention to what's going to flow through. So what's going to come through? That's what I was saying previously, is that I don't do this work alone. I have my spirit and my soul always with me, my highest self, using this physical body as the vehicle to bring through the energy. I also have my mediumship guides. I have my spirit guides. I have my angels. And I believe that because I am in constant communication with the beings in spirit that I call my team of light, the illuminated ones, because I am in constant communication with them, I become more fluent. Now, if I was someone who, these are the only hours I do my mediumship work, I'm going to sit in prayer, that's the only time I'm going to communicate with spirit, I wouldn't be as skillful as I am. But I am constantly talking to my spirit guides. Sometimes I will walk around with my earbuds in so that while I'm speaking out loud, people don't wonder who I'm talking to because I have my earbuds in. They think I'm speaking on the phone to somebody. So I believe that as the frequency of the earth is rising and as the divinity and consciousness is expanding, all of us that are willing to rise up with it are being brought up with it. And even people who aren't at all on a spiritual path, they're being afforded the opportunity to elevate in consciousness as well. For other people, they might call that quantum physics. If they're an atheist, they might call it something else. I don't get caught up with the words. I just know that every single thing is ascending right now, all the way down to the microbes in the soil, all the way down to the core of the earth. And I think that's super exciting. And I love to be a part of it in a way that I'm aware of it. Because, you probably get those tones, those really high pitched tones that come into your ear and everything else fades away and you just hear that high pitched tone. For me, that's a download of information. And when I have that happening, I always get really quiet and for some reason I open up my palms, and I don't even open up my palms when I do energy work, but when this download is coming in, I just do this. And then I thank my guides for letting the download come in. I also thank them for attuning the information for me, because I believe that source energy is so powerful that I don't want it just flowing into me full force. It'd probably, knock me for a loop. So guides, can you please make sure that every bit of energy, in fact, I don't say please, I say thank you. Thank you for attuning every energy and every stream of energy that comes into me before it even gets to my energy field. Thank you for attuning it so it's perfect for me, that I can handle it, that I can process it, and that I can be up leveled because of it, and in a way that I can thrive because of. So I don't believe that energy inherently can hurt you like on purpose, but it's like the energy flowing in through our outlets in our home. You don't want to stick a fork in there. You're going to really get shocked. So I believe that this life force energy is so powerful and so creative that you really want it to be attuned finely for you before it comes into you, so that it doesn't overwhelm you. And I think that's how I'm able to do this work and not get overwhelmed. I don't feel depleted by the work that I do. I feel energized by it. And I really love that.
Walk us through a mediumship session. I love mediums. I am so grateful for mediums. I've used mediums many, many times.
Mm-hmm.
If you're watching this and you've never had a session with a good medium like Chenée, it is so valuable. And the things that you learn, and just a sense of connectedness to those that are no longer in physical, is just indescribable. So when you start out, walk us through what happens and how you prepare yourself. And one of the things I was wondering, when you were talking about when you're connecting with a spirit and you're not sure how they're going to give you the information, do you find yourself kind of shifting your energy just a little bit in order to connect better with them? Is it kind of an adjustment for you then, other than in just talking to a person in human form?
It can be. So before each session, and actually in between sessions, I go outside to my backyard. I stand barefoot on the grass. I turn my face to the sun, and I really, really remind myself that I am the place where the heavens and the earth unite. Each being is that place. Each tree is that place. So I stand there and I allow myself to be recharged, even if just for a minute, to be recharged by the earth energies, to be recharged by the cosmic energies. And then I speak out loud to my beautiful team of light. And I just say, thank you for allowing me to be your voice. Thank you for allowing me to communicate with beings in spirit. And I really just and that's how quickly it can happen. You can do it just instantaneously and be recharged, be cleansed and cleared of any previous readings, anybody else's loved ones that might be hanging around. And I recharge myself. Then I usually about an hour or two ahead of time, unless I have readings that are stacked on top of each other, which I try not to do them too stacked on each other, but I'll give myself a bit of a padding between each reading. And I will let the person's loved ones know that are in spirit, okay, I'm open now. So go ahead and start bringing through images, start bringing through smells, start bringing through whatever messages you would like. And I always know that only love and light is going to come through, because once these beings are in spirit, they are free of baggage. They are free of shame and guilt. And if they have an apology that they want to bring through, they'll bring it through, but there's no shame or guilt with it. They'll just really get the apology through, and they'll make it very clear that they're not asking their loved one to forgive them. They're not saying, you must forgive me, because that puts the burden on the loved one here in the physical world. They're saying, I love you and I'm sorry for XYZ. Sometimes I will see what they are apologizing for, and sometimes I won't, because I've let my higher self and my guides know if it's something atrocious, I don't want to know the details, and I don't want to see the images, because then I can't unsee that. I have a little bit of a photographic memory, and that once I see something, I can't unsee it. And if you tell me something graphic, it'll come through with images. So I'm very careful about what I don't watch the news. I don't listen to, anything that's going to have horror in it or anything like that. So anyway, so I open up to the beings in spirit, and I say, okay, start bringing through information, and information just starts flooding in. So then I have a little sticky note over on the computer, the sticky note program, and I write out these things that come through. So then I sit down in my chair here in this oasis, and I clear the area with my singing bowl, and I just, connect with the client over Zoom. And then I will say to them, don't give me any details. This is going to be a family reunion. This is going to be a lot of information coming through. So please say yes, no, I don't know. You feel free for this to be a conversation. But if I say I have someone here that feels like an aunt, don't start filling in the blanks. Don't tell me, oh yeah, that was Aunt Judy. She died when I was 3 in a car accident. Don't tell me that. That's how you can, it's what's called feeding the medium. Don't feed the medium. Like, don't do that. So I tell the people, so here are the ground rules. First of all, I'm happy to meet you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for trusting me to do this work. And here's some really beautiful rules of engagement that will help you have the best reading possible. So I don't want you to give me too much information. If something that I bring through brings you joy, let me see that joy. I'm fine with that. And then sometimes, so instead of looking at you through the camera and making eye contact, I might be staring off just a little bit to the side of you, because I'm going to be bringing through information, and I don't want your facial reaction to influence what I'm going to say, right? Because I don't want to do cold reading of people. I really want this to come through mediumistically. And I can tell the difference between telepathy, mediumship readings, psychic readings, and looking at someone and getting information. Those are all very different ways to get information. And I find it very important to do this work with integrity and with honesty. This is very important work to me. This is soul work to me. This is my calling. And as I say this, my head is tingling. So this is very important to do this work honestly. So once I take about 30 seconds to a minute to kind of set the little parameters of how this conversation should go, then immediately the information starts pouring through, and I start speaking really fast because it's so much information coming through. And sometimes I'll have to say, okay, wait a minute, you got to slow down, because I don't want to take the time to type all of this out, but I can only speak so quickly. And so then I'll say, okay, before I even sat down, here's the things that came through. And then I'll say, this came through, that came through, this came through. For a reading I did quite a while ago, are you familiar with those things called shrinky dinks?
No.
Okay, I can't remember. It seems like when I was a kid, we did them. So it was back in the 70s. And there are these things that they come in a plastic form, and I think you put them on a cookie sheet and you put them in the oven, and they shrink down and they become a form like a dog or a cat or a turkey or what have you. I haven't seen them in years. I haven't had anyone refer to them in years, but shrinky dinks came through. All this information started coming through before I even connected with the client, with the sitter. And so I went through my spiel, said what I had to say. I said, okay, all these things are coming through. Let me know which one of those things are important to you, but don't give me details why. And so she said, yep, shrinky dinks are important. Piano was coming through. Piano was important. Tom Jones, that singer, was coming through. Okay, yep, that's important. So these things will come through, and they seem kind of disparate and totally unconnected. But by the time the mediumship reading is done, they've connected. They've all come through and were meaningful. And so we'll go through all kinds of information. We'll go through. Not everything's a hit. Sometimes things will come through, and the person will say, no, yeah, that one doesn't make any sense to me. That one doesn't ring true. I'm like, okay, no problem. If anything else wants to come through about that to help become evidence, then I welcome that to come through from spirit. But if not, that's fine. It's like in conversation, even between two people who know each other really well, sometimes you're going to say something that just doesn't land. It just doesn't make sense to the person. So it's same thing with the conversations in spirit. So information will keep coming through. Now, oftentimes I'll get an email from someone 3 to 4 days later, a week or two later. Oh, remember that thing that came through that I said I didn't recognize? Well, I checked with my uncle, my cousin, my brother, my sister, and yes, that was meaningful. One of the most recent readings that I did, the person's wife made her transition in spirit to spirit while they were laying side by side in bed, and they don't usually sleep in the same bed with each other. But this particular night, they were sleeping side by side, and it was on. And so I asked her. I said, if your dad is open to these sorts of questions, ask him if your mom, his wife, passed on his left-hand side, because I'm feeling a lot of warmth on my left-hand side. And the message that's coming through is that your mom, her spirit, knew that the passing was going to happen that night. So the spirit world arranged for them to go out of town, to be sleeping side by side, and she made her transition on his left-hand side. So she got back to me a couple of days later and said, yeah, she was on his left-hand side when she made the transition. And he said that he had a feeling in retrospect that she knew it was her time to go. I said, yes, she did. And it was important to her to go side by side in bed with her beloved husband, her soulmate. And so even though that's not easy on the husband, for her to have made her transition right beside him like that, it was a gift to her to get to leave into the spirit realm and to leave that physical body laying side by side with her beloved husband.
Mhm.
So these
And
beautiful things will just flow through. And what I've had to learn how to do is hold the space for the grief,
yeah,
because even though beautiful information is flowing through, grief is flowing through as well. But what I love is that by the end of the sessions, maybe someone has started out just feeling heavy and feeling low and not being sure that their loved one is there with them. By the end of an hour-long session, and oftentimes they go over because there's so much information coming through, by the end of the session, oh my goodness, the person who is sitting in front of me that I'm reading for looks lighter. They look brighter. Their tears turn to laughter and joy. Their sadness turned to hopefulness and optimism, because now they know without a doubt their loved one continues, and their loved one is still right there, and they're still being invited to continue a relationship with their loved one.
yeah, that is so beautiful. And I am always so impressed and blown away with how clever spirit can be in preparing us for events,
Mm,
even months, weeks and
right,
months in advance, to maneuver this arrangement and this meeting and this the event, to get everything lined up for this beautiful moment
right,
that you might not even realize how all the parts and pieces came together until, years later, that you look back and you go, "Oh
right,
my gosh, that was so
right.
beautifully orchestrated." And I know that in my own life, when you look back in times of transition, all the pieces came together so beautifully
Yeah.
to make it really work for those that stayed behind.
Well, yeah. And if you don't mind my sharing another story, because you talk about years, sometimes these things are years in the making. When I was 17 years old, a dear friend of mine died in a car accident. And the story was that he was driving. Now, I didn't know at the time where Nevada City was. So in my mind, I was thinking he died in Nevada. He was driving a car on a 2-lane highway. A tree, a big evergreen tree, had blown across the highway, blocked the whole highway. And it was nighttime, and his car hit the tree, and he was flown to UC Davis Medical Center, which is a trauma center here in California, and he was pronounced brain dead. So he probably died instantaneously. But at 17 years old, that was so incredibly heartbreaking. And I had already lost 2 grandparents before I was even a teenager, had lost aunts and uncles. So death was not an unusual thing in my life growing up, but it was a friend. It was a friend who was only, I believe, just a month shy of turning 19. So of course, oh my goodness, just heartache and heartbreak and sadness. And I went to his funeral, and I just remember just thinking, wow, he was so incredibly young to have made his transition. I really hope that he had got to experience as much of life as he could during those 19 years and isn't missing out on life, because I wasn't a medium yet then. So I didn't realize life definitely continues. So 10 years transpire from that point to when this beautiful occurrence happened. 10 years have gone by. In the meantime, I've lived in England for 3 months. I've lived in France for 3 months. I've moved all over the place, various parts of California. Just all kinds of life has taken place. And the only reason why I ended up, so I grew up in Sacramento. I left Sacramento as soon as I graduated college. The only reason why I ended up back in Sacramento was because I was going to study to be a sign language interpreter. And Sacramento had a college that offered sign language interpreting. And so, long story short, I ended up meeting this man that I ended up dating for about, I think, 3 years is what we were together. And we were together for a full year, living together and everything for a full year. And we were in Nevada City. Now, I still didn't make the connection between Nevada City and my friend's transition from physical to spirit, because I was still thinking he had died in Nevada. So, but this person and I were in a band together with his sister and everything, and we had performed on New Year's Eve. It was a blustery night, really windy. It was a curvy 2-lane road to get back home. But the people that we were staying with were having an argument really loudly at 2 in the morning. So we weren't getting any sleep. And my partner at the time said, well, how about if we just drive home? We can be home in about an hour and a half. We can sleep in if we need to. And I'm like, well, it's 2 a.m. It's New Year's Eve. People have probably been drinking. It was a night just like this that my friend died. And I used my friend's name. And my partner at the time looked at me and had this stunned look on his face. And he said, what was your friend's last name? And I said his full name. And he said, oh my God, that's the car accident that I was in 10 years ago. And I said, what? And at first I'm thinking, what a weird prank to say. Why would you be pranking me like this? Why would you be? Because my mind's trying to wrap itself around this reality. And he said, yeah, no, I'm not kidding. He said, we were in a car driving from Nevada City back to Sacramento. We crashed into a tree and yada, yada, all these things transpired. And I said, you were in that car? So the car accident that you told me about is the exact same car accident that my friend died in, and my friend was the driver. And he said, yes. And so for that whole year, we knew that I knew he had been in a car accident. He was a jumpy passenger because he had been in a car accident. And he knew that I had had a friend that had died in a car accident. But because I never used my friend's name and I thought my friend had died in Nevada, we did not make the connection that that was the same car accident. So I believe that spirit made sure that we spoke about that story that night because that would keep us off of the road. And I said, okay, then for sure, we're not driving home, because I think we made this connection just now tonight to say, don't drive on the road. You probably won't make it home alive or in one piece. And so then I was able to hear from my partner at the time what my friend's last few hours of life were like. He was joyful, he was happy, and and there was no alcohol involved. There was nothing involved. He was driving a Volkswagen Bug, and a Volkswagen Bug in a stormy, blustery night is going to get blown all over the road. About a half of an hour before the accident happened, a police officer had pulled them over just to make sure that he wasn't driving because the wind was blowing his car around so much. So that whole long story is just to point out that 10 years, and I had lived in 2 different continents, and I had been all over, the state of California, living in different places. I had had many different careers. Life had taken place for 10 years. And if it hadn't been for thinking that I was going to become a sign language interpreter, I wouldn't have been back in Sacramento, and I wouldn't have met my partner at that time. And I wouldn't have known, wow, so this can happen. You can meet one of the people who was in the car accident 10 years previous. You can meet them just randomly. It's not random, it's synchronistically.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that my partner at the time didn't actually know my friend. My partner at the time had hitchhiked as a 16-year-old kid. He had hitchhiked to get to Nevada City to go to a concert. And so he knew my friend's fiance. And so that's why so all these beautiful synchronistic events had to take place and transpire for he and I to come together. And for me to recognize it out of probably back at that time, the 6 billion souls on the planet. And he and I ended up, meeting each other. And yeah, so it's just amazing to me. This is nothing difficult for spirit. My human mind is like, oh my gosh, but for spirit, they're like easy peasy.
Wait, and I see them over there high-fiving each other, going, yeah, we pulled that one off. I mean, they've got to be having so much fun.
Yes,
Putting
yes.
all these parts and pieces together and pulling it. I know I would really love that. That would be so much fun.
I know, and even when very often after I do mediumship readings, later on that same day, something will happen here in the physical that came through in a reading. One of the most recent mediumship readings, a woman had asked if a feather that they found in the hallway of a new house that they're building, if that was from her dog, who's now in spirit. And I said, yes, it is. And I was bringing through information. Later on that same day, while I was walking my dog in a park, I just happened to look over and see this beautiful feather sticking up perpendicular from the grass, perpendicular feather, and blowing in the wind. And so I, of course, got out my phone, started videotaping it and speaking about the fact that I just got through doing a mediumship reading where the importance of feathers were coming through. And while I'm videotaping it, my dog sticks his nose into the frame of the camera and grabs the feather and takes it and shakes it and starts running around and playing. And so just things like that come up where spirit is just like, ooh, we're going to dazzle her some more, and we're going to bring through in the physical realm something that was spoken about during her mediumship reading.
Yeah.
So, oh my goodness, it is, I am so much happier since becoming a medium and since becoming an energy worker and an energy healer, because you recognize that no, this is not all there is, this physical world. It's not nearly at all that there is. This is a tiny fraction of what it is. And it's beautiful. And so I just am so grateful every day that people trust me to do this work with them. Yeah. It's such a joy and an honor. It's a blessing.
It is. You have been such a delight. This conversation has just been fascinating for me. And I love the playful attitude you have with spirit because I think that they are having so much fun with us.
Yes,
You're
they
honored.
are.
All right. So how do we find out more about you?
I have a website, so it's ChenéeFournier.com, and people can learn all about what I offer. They can learn about me and just kind of go a little bit deeper into me and just who I am, where I came from, sort of thing. I also have a YouTube channel, which I have not updated in forever. But the reason why I created the YouTube channel was just in case people couldn't afford a private session, well, they can listen to the meditations that are on there, because every meditation that I do, I get quiet and I channel it. I don't script any of my meditations out. I don't have a stock sort of script that I go by. I don't do any of that. I sit down, I let spirit flow through me, and I speak the meditation. And so each one of those meditations is actually imbued with healing frequencies. So even if someone listened to it 12 different times, they're going to get something different each time. So that I really love. I just don't like all the commercials that YouTube sticks in there. So you're listening to this gorgeous meditation, and all of a sudden, boom, this loud commercial comes on. So I quit updating it. But I also have a very small presence on Instagram. So it's just Chenée Fournier on Instagram. And I'm also going to be hosting a energy healing session at the International Association of Near-Death Studies Conference in Arizona in August. And for 3 of the days that I'm there, I'm going to be offering mediumship readings. And I think it's like a really, really low fee. And all of that fee will go to the Lions organization, since they're a nonprofit.
Wonderful. And we'll have all that information in the
Thank you.
description box down below. Chenée,
Lovely.
this has been an absolute delight. I hope you'll come back and see us again sometime.
Thank you. Thank you. I've really enjoyed our time together.
I did too. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed this video. Coming up next, this is a good one, or you might really like this one too. Either one of them could be perfect for you. Before you leave, don't forget to subscribe.